Okay, thank you very much for inviting me here. This is the university I'm from, Lund University. As you can see, it's quite an old university. We got all faculties, some 47,000 students, and quite a lot of employees, and a large turnover. This turnover is the total for the university, and at least 70% of that is for research. So it's a very research-intensive university. I am from the Faculty of Engineering, and the reward system that I will talk about today is developed and run at the Faculty of Engineering, which is the largest faculty at the university, with almost 10,000 students. So we are a major part of Lund University. And as you can see, it's very nice. Die Sonne scheint immer in Lund. No, it's not like that. It's often quite miserable, but when the weather is nice, it's very nice. What I will talk about today is our Pedagogical Academy, which is a reward system for excellence in university teaching. First, I will show you a model that will demonstrate how we look at excellence in university teaching. And in relation to this system, you can look at excellence in many ways, but this is one way of doing it. Then I will talk a little bit about, or quite a lot about, the system that we have, which we call the Pedagogical Academy. You can reward excellence in many ways. We saw one way yesterday when you awarded your teachers. This is another system and slightly different criteria from what you used yesterday. I will also say something about the development, has something happened at the Faculty of Engineering, because a system like this, it is not, you do reward teachers, excellent teachers, and they are happy and it's very nice, but the reason we do it is not primarily to reward individual teachers, but to enhance the entire Faculty of Engineering in our case, to promote a scholarly pedagogical development at the Faculty of Engineering. That's why we have this system. So has something happened at the Faculty of Engineering? I'll show you some research results showing that something has happened over the past 10 years. I will also show you some more anecdotal effects, well, not quite anecdotal, but not so researched effects, but things that we see at the Faculty of Engineering. And I suppose that's about all. If we have time, I can show you some theoretical aspects in relation to the model that I will start with. And this is what we are working with right now, trying to theorize it a bit, to use theoretical educational aspects in relation to what we are doing. So we'll start with the model in a minute. First, what then constitutes excellence in university teaching? What we argue is that it is more than just the teaching practice. And we say that excellent teachers, they demonstrate what we call pedagogical competence at a high level. And then we have to define what is pedagogical competence, and that's our model then. At the center in this model is the teaching practice. And of course, that is fundamental for teaching, that a teacher can teach in a way that supports student learning in the best possible way. So the teaching practice must never be forgotten, of course. Yesterday, when you awarded your teachers, I think you can say that you awarded them mostly because of their excellence in their teaching practice, and that's fine. But in this system, we want to award teachers for a scholarly approach to teaching and learning in a broader way. So we would say then that excellent teachers has to be able have to be able to observe their own teaching in different ways, what happens when we teach, and also to be able to observe the learning of the students, the results of the teaching efforts. And in doing these observations, theoretical aspects are, of course, important. The knowledge about teaching and student learning. Because the more you know, the more knowledge you have about teaching and learning, the more things you can observe that you maybe didn't even see if you didn't have this knowledge. So theory is important. And then, based on observations, based on theoretical aspects, you plan for a better practice. So planning is very important. And then the practice, hopefully, will be even better. And you can work around it. Of course, you don't work in a circle like that. You work in different aspects of it. But this is a way to make a model that people can adopt to and use. And since we are from a faculty of, I am from a faculty of engineering, models are extremely important, and if we show them, teachers, dean, everybody, show them a model like this, they immediately get interested, and it's so much more easy to talk about these things if you have this kind of models. If you go to the Faculty of Social Sciences, where I have worked also quite a lot with them, they are not at all interested in models like this. They want 5 pages of text that they can go into and really look at. So that's cultural difference between different faculties, of course. Then, what you observe depends on the perspectives you have on teaching and learning, as I mentioned a bit. And when it comes to theory, of course, you can attend courses in teaching and learning, but you can also have informed pedagogical discussions with colleagues at seminars, attend a conference like this, for example, to know more, to learn more about teaching and learning. Then when it comes to planning and the practice, of course, there are limiting aspects. You have economical aspects, always economical aspects. You have cultural aspects, you have curriculum aspects, and so on. But you also have possibilities, because if you observe things, if you come up with new ideas that nobody hadn't even thought about before, then you get new possibilities, which you shouldn't forget, and possibilities to improve the teaching practice. We call the upper part there the teaching practice. We call that teaching skills. In Swedish, we would call it, and if I translate that Swedish into German, we would call it, I think, Unterricht skills, something like that. And the entire model we would call pedagogical competence in English. In Swedish, that would be pedagogische Skickligkeit or something like that. The Swedish words are much better than the English. I'm aware of that, but this is the way we do it. And the reason we use pedagogical competence is because that is the phrase that's used in all official texts, law texts, and so on. So every university teacher has to show pedagogical competence. But what is pedagogical competence? This is our view of what is pedagogical competence. There are quite a lot of things written about it. We have one Australian researcher, Magin. He has talked about demonstrated proficiency and documented achievements, which would be approximately something like teaching skills and pedagogical competence. And we have also written about this. Okay, let's turn to the second part of the speech, and that is our system of rewarding excellence in university teaching. We call it the Pedagogical Academy, and teachers can apply to this academy and get the reward. And then if they do that, they have to show that they have a clear focus on student learning and that they are reflective practitioners. That's the most important thing. There are money in the system, both for the individuals and for the departments where they come from. I should say that, well, I'll come back to the timeline in a few minutes, but when we developed this system some 10 years ago, we have a system for researchers in Sweden, and I think you have in Germany as well. We call it docent. And I know you have something you call docent. I'm not sure it's exactly the same thing. But the Swedish docent is, we could translate into English and call it senior researcher. And every academic trying to become a professor in the system, they first become a docent. And in this docent system, you have a raise in salary for the individual, and you have extra grants for the department. So we took the same amounts into this system, saying that if you are an excellent teacher like this, you should have the same monetary incentives as when you become docent. So that was very purposefully done from the start. When you apply for this system, you do it with a teaching portfolio. I know you have written here about Lear portfolios, and that would be the same thing. This teaching portfolio is peer-reviewed, and you can have different systems there. Our system is an internal peer review system, which I'll come back to. And the teaching portfolio has to be related to teaching and learning in some way. So the application then, any teacher at the Faculty of Engineering can apply, and they hand in, as I said, a teaching portfolio. What we say about the teaching portfolio is that it must have a scholarly reflection on teaching and learning. Could call it teaching philosophy. There are other terms for it. But a scholarly reflection must be in the teaching portfolio. But that is not enough. This reflection has to be integrated with examples from the teaching practice. Because what we are rewarding here is the teaching practice. So it's not enough for you to be able to write a nice reflection about teaching and learning. You can be a professor of education, you can have read tens of books of education and write a nice reflection. If it's not related to your teaching practice, and if you cannot show the connection to your teaching practice, you will not be rewarded in this system. So the practice is important. Then you have to have a recommendation from your head of department, a CV, and you have to have discussed it with 2 critical friends, which has to be previously rewarded teachers. This is in line with how you apply for the docentship, where you have to have these things as well. And the head of department is not assessing you. He or she will only write this recommendation letter and guarantee that this teacher that I know has no problems with his or her students or colleagues and so on. So that's the main reason for the recommendation. Then the assessment, we have an internal peer review system in our system. So we have an assessment group, and this assessment group consists of previously rewarded teachers. They read all the material, the portfolio, and all other material that the applicant might hand in, articles they have written, different kinds of other papers that they want to show. And then they interview the applicant. And after that, there will be an assessment protocol written where the teachers are then assessed against the criteria. In a minute, I'll show you the criteria. And this assessment protocol is then formally handed over to a teacher appointment committee who makes the final decision whether it should be accepted or not. And if it's accepted, then the dean will write his signature or her signature on the diploma. The assessment group consists of between 5, 6, up to 8, 9 teachers, depending on the amount of people applying. But for each individual application, 3 assessors are reading the paper, the portfolio, and interviewing. 3 assessors plus 1, which we call pedagogical expert. Not sure about the title, but that's me at the moment. So we are 4 interviewing each applicant. But the decision is made by colleagues. So the formal decision about the assessment protocol is made by the 3 assessors. If you're successful, you get a title, excellent teaching practitioner. You get a raise in salary, and you get increased teaching grants for the department. And the increased teaching grants for the department is very important, because otherwise the department would have been forced to raise the salary without getting extra money. So they would actually be punished for it, which they would not like. So the 6,000 euros per year for increased teaching grants will cover the extra, the raise in salary, and a little bit more, not much, a little bit more. And this raise in salary is permanent, of course, and you never know what happens then when every year. But the increased grants for the department is very permanent. So every year you get 6,000 per rewarded teacher to that department. And there's no extra money in the system, so very successful departments get a little bit more. Very unsuccessful departments get a little bit less. It's not very much. It's less than 1% of the total budget for undergraduate education. But as we hear, it is important that there are money in the system, because it shows the seriousness. Some statistics. We've had this system since 2002. We had a small interruption in between. I'll come back to that as well. But during these years, we have awarded 92 teachers. And we have about 600, 650 academic teachers at the Faculty of Engineering. So it could be more, could be better. Things move slowly. They tend to do that in academia. If you compare this to the docentship, there are substantially more people applying for docentship, because that is so important, because they want to become professors in the end. So this is not so many, but still quite okay. We are very happy that more than 1/3 are full professors, and that's also very important, and it sends the signal that this is not just for those lecturing, but for all. We have 18 departments at the faculty, and they have between 1 and 10 rewarded teachers at these different departments. And this statistics is up until this year. This year is not in here. There are 8 applicants this year, so it might be 100 if everyone is successful. So we have criteria, of course. And these are the areas of the criteria. A clear focus on student learning. You should show a clear development over time. And finally, a scholarly approach to teaching and learning, which is very important. Well, all are important. There are 8 criteria in total. These are simplified versions of the criteria. In the official texts, they are a bit more elaborate. But you should have a learning perspective. You should show an integration between theory and practice, as I already said. And you should, in your practice, have a sound relation with your students. This is not a popularity prize, and you do not have to be loved by your students. You don't even have to become very positive course evaluations, but you have to reflect upon it, and you have to be scholarly about what you're doing. That's the most important thing. But you don't have to. You're not allowed to be rude to your students. You're not allowed to do things that are improper, not nice to the student. You have to show clear development over time, and that you have systematically developed your teaching with regard to learning, student learning, which is the most important thing there. And you also have to have ideas for the future, in the same way as when you apply for promotion, anything, you have to show what research plans are you having. That's normal. Then you should also be able to show what teaching plans do you have for the future. A scholarly approach to teaching and learning. You should show that you should be able to reflect on theory that is relevant for your subject. Doesn't mean you have to follow theory. It doesn't mean you have to have read some theoretical aspects on teaching and learning and then stick to that. You can have your own theories, of course. You can do exactly the way you want to teach. You can lecture for 24 hours, that's what you like. But you have to be scholarly about it, and you have to be able to reflect and have reasons for what you're doing. Then you have to be able to show some kind of knowledge about your students' learning. It says here you have to search for and create knowledge about student learning in your discipline. You don't have to necessarily have to make elaborate investigations about it, but you have to reflect on their learning, and you have to make some kind of knowledge so that you're not just lecturing without knowing what is happening among the students. And finally, also very important, you have to make your findings public. You have to relate to your fellow colleagues, and more than just talking to the neighbor in your next room. So you have to, of course, you can publish. You can publish in journals. You can publish locally at local. We have a local campus conference, for example. We have a newsletter, so you can do it in different ways. But you have to be public with your teaching, and you have to relate to what others do about teaching and learning. So these are the criteria that we have. And we have had them now in this version since 2005 or 6. And we think there is one area of criteria here missing. Do you miss anything here that you would like to see? It's perfect, isn't it? Yeah.
I would miss some sort of evaluation. I mean, the effects on the real effects on the students' learning.
Yeah, but that could be included in some of them. But you would want to have it more explicit. Something. Okay, I'll show you what we are thinking about is that we have found over the years. At the beginning, we thought that this is, you don't even have to say to raise the importance of the subject. But we have found out that it's really important that you have it in written. So what we are thinking about is maybe a fourth area here. And we are thinking about Lee Schulman from the United States. Maybe some of you have heard about him. He has an article which is quite old now, but still very, very important. He talks about 3 kinds of knowledges. Subject matter content knowledge, which is that you should know your subject. And that goes without saying. I mean, I don't think we have to have a criteria about that you should know your subject. But you should have a pedagogical content knowledge, which is then teaching and learning in relation to the subject. And since we are in Germany, I can use the word didactics, because in England that's something difficult. But didaktik in German is the same word as we use for didactic, and that is teaching and learning, of course. So pedagogical content knowledge would be didactic in the subject, which is what this conference is about. And finally, curricular knowledge is also important, especially at the Faculty of Engineering, where we have 14 or 15 5-year programs, different engineering programs, where you become, I think you call it diploma engineer. So this is something that we will include either as a fourth area or include in the criteria that we have. We don't have any specific criteria on leadership, pedagogical leadership, educational leadership. Some of other universities in Sweden that have adopted similar systems have criteria about leadership. We would argue that you can use your pedagogical leadership to apply to several of these criteria. That's, if you prefer to have it as a special criteria, of course you can have that. Timeline. Okay. This started in the late 90s with an idea from the present dean. So it came from the top, actually. He had some idea that we should recognize excellent teachers at the Faculty of Engineering. And he was wise enough to give it to a working group because his idea were a bit strange. And this working group consisted of 5 teachers. I was part of that group, mostly because I was teaching chemical engineering at the time. By the way, the present dean that we have now, which is third dean after that, he was also a member of that working group. So we have been quite lucky with academic leaders and so on in relation to this system. But this working group came out with a first version of the Pedagogical Academy in 2001. We involved all heads of departments in the work. So they were not in the working group, but they were constantly kept informed about the progress of the work, and they were able to influence the work. They were also given the opportunity to elect one teacher from each department to form the first group to be assessed. This is a bit controversial, could be. We asked the heads of departments to name persons. And the reason for this is that we wanted the first group of teachers to be represented from all departments at the faculty. The drawback was that not all heads of departments really understood what they were supposed to do. So some of those teachers that they appointed, they did appoint them because they had been working for 35 years with teaching, maybe not so scholarly. But Afterwards, we think it was a right decision to do it like this, because we got all the heads of departments were on the vote, they were supporting the system. Because if you don't have the heads of departments with you, they can ruin a system like this with no problem at all. So that we think that's important. This first version, which we launched in 2001, and by the way, the assessment group for the first round, those that the heads of departments had appointed, the assessment groups were the same as the working group. So we in the working group did the first interviews and the first assessment. Then it was open to anybody to apply. And we got quite a lot of applications in the first year, some 15, 20 applications every year. Nowadays, it's more like 7, 8, 9 applications per year. When the first version had gone on for about 2 years, 2.5 years, we had seen quite a lot of problems with it. And not only problems, but questions that needed to be answered. So we went to the dean, it was a new dean now, and she decided, yeah, let's make a stop now, and let's find out, let's learn more about the system, and then we'll see if we will continue. So we started a research project. I was part of that as well, and we invited researchers from the Department of Education at Lund University that we knew, and some teachers from the Faculty of Engineering. So what we did is that we studied in detail the third application round. We looked at all material, all teaching portfolios. We videotaped the interviews. So we asked the teachers if it was okay to videotape. So we have 1.5 hour videotape for each application. That's a half an hour with the assessment group discussing before the interview, half an hour interview, and half an hour discussions after the interview. This is the Faculty of Engineering, so if you ask them, is it okay if we film you, they immediately said, yes, of course, no problem at all. We did learn afterwards that maybe it's not so simple. We should have some ethical forms and so on, but we didn't know that at the time. So we have it. This was, especially the films were extremely important in this project. You could see so many things in these films. How an assessment group like this starts, how they discuss this and move forward, backwards, and so on before they get to a decision. In this first version, we also had this. We are engineers, so we like numbers. So we decided that in this first version, we had 6 criteria. And it was decided then that we should grade each criteria from 0 to 10. And to get a pass, you should have 5 in all criteria. And excellent, we have solved the problem. But what is a 5? And it became so, this is of course the way it is. But it was so obvious when we looked at the films that the different assessors had so different views on what is a 1, what is a 10, what is a 5, that it's quite useless. And we have totally abolished that now, and we only rely on a qualitative assessment against the criteria. We don't have any figures at all anymore. So that's one of the things that was changed. The second version then was launched in 2005. That's the one we have now. In that version, we have better criteria. We have a better structure. And the formal structure for how we do it is better. And most important, the knowledge about how to reward excellence in teaching. That's the most rewarding thing with this research project. It has also led to quite a lot of other things, both nationally and internationally. We have had a national project for 2 years, resulting in a book about rewarding excellence in teaching and learning. I do have 2 copies, but you can have them. It's easily downloadable as a PDF. We wrote it in Swedish, and then we had it translated into English by a professional translator, which did make some mistakes, but this is the book we have. And this is from 10 Swedish universities, so there are different chapters from each university. And our chapter is the same as we have in Birgit's book, Lehrportfolio book. And we have worked quite a lot, both also internationally. We have had an international project together with a university or 2 universities in South Africa. And I will show you some results from that now. So we come to the development. Has something happened? The reason for having an academy like this is, of course, to raise the quality of teaching and learning at the faculty. And if we can see any effects, then that would be nice, of course. Also, who are rewarded? Where are they? What are the students' views on this? And policy levels and so on. I didn't say anything about the students. The students are in the deciding committee, the teacher appointment committee. That's where the students are. There are no students in the assessment groups. So the project that this will also be a book. It should have been published a year ago, but it is still in South Africa, and it will be published in South Africa. And in this research project that we looked at, no, I have to start there. We looked at the quality enhancement. We looked at both teaching portfolios, and we looked at conference articles. We have a campus conference at the Faculty of Engineering every 2nd year, where teachers present work that they have done to their colleagues. And we looked at the 2 years, 2003 and 2010, and we compared these 2. So if we start with the teaching portfolios, the question is then, how is the pedagogical practice, the teaching practice, expressed in the teaching portfolios in those 2 years? And we looked at the same thing then afterwards in the conference papers. So we got a triangulation between teaching portfolios and conference papers. What we looked at was what we have here, what, how, effects, and so on. What is, if we look at the teaching portfolios, how do people write about what they are teaching about? Are you with me? The how is, how do people write about how they are teaching, the methods they use about teaching and learning? So that's the what and the how in teaching. Then we looked at, are they discussing effects of their teaching? And in what way are they doing that? Effects on student learning. Is there a link between theory and practice in the teaching portfolios? And are the teachers sharing and disseminating their knowledge in different ways? So we looked at these 5 areas. And I'll just very quickly show you the results. I have percentage here. I'm quite aware, I mean, it wasn't an enormous amount of portfolios that we looked at, some 20 portfolios or something like that. And maybe you shouldn't use percentage here, but it's much more easy for you to see if we have that. So you have to think about that. So if we look at portfolios and see how are teachers discussing what they are teaching about? Are they discussing what they are teaching about? We have 3 criteria here. It's not present. They are not at all discussing what they are teaching about. Second one is it's descriptive. They are describing what they are teaching about. And the third one is reflective. They are reflecting on what they are teaching about. And you see the difference here between those 2 years. A clear development, much more reflective in 2010 than in 2003. If you do the same thing and look at discussions about how teachers are teaching, how are they discussing the methods they use? See the same thing? Well, almost everyone described it 10 years ago. Now they are much more reflective about it. The link between theory and practice is even more clear here, because there are other criteria here. The first two on the left are from 2003, and the rest are from 2010. So there are, in 2003, everybody was either just discussing their practice with no educational theory, or they were discussing theory and practice, but separately. In 2010, none of the portfolios that we looked at were in these categories. They all had some kind of links. And you see about a little bit more than 50%, they use theory to describe their practice. So they have typically learned more about teaching and learning, and they use this knowledge in their description of their practice. But then about 30%, a little bit more, they use their theoretical knowledge to develop their practice, which is at a higher level. And we even found someone that's developed theory, but I mean, that's not what we are requiring at all, but it's interesting that people even develop theory. So that's a clear development here. Effects on student learning, not present, based on own experience, based on what you see in your classroom. And finally, at the highest level, they make specified investigations about this. Also, a development towards more investigations about theory and practice, about effects of teaching and learning. And finally, sharing and disseminating. I have no figures there, but you see a clear development here from departmental level towards faculty, university, and even national levels. And of course, there are more arenas available now than there were 10 years ago. So it's natural. But I mean, in Lund, we have every second year we have a university-wide conference about teaching and learning. And every second year we have a campus conference about teaching and learning. And those are new arenas that people use. We also have a national conference on teaching and learning, which attends about 500 to 600 teachers from all over Sweden every second year on a national level. And that's quite good, because we are 9 million and you are 82. That would be, yeah, you would have 4,000 or 5,000 here in Germany if it were linear at a national conference like this. So it's quite good. What can we say about this? This is when we looked at teaching portfolios from those 2 years, and we see a clear development. And I showed this in Lund, different kinds of teachers and professors, and then they would immediately say, some of them critical would say, yes, of course, people learn how to do it. And we will say, yes, but that's the reason why we have it, that people should get better and learn how to do it better and become better teachers. So what's the difference between becoming a better researcher than becoming a better teacher? You learn. So we don't take that criticism so seriously, actually. Then we compared this to conference articles. And that was, by the way, that was a professor of engineering, no, sorry, of education who did this part of the project that we invited from another university. And she looked at some 25 papers from the same 2 years, papers written to maybe I should say that, at the campus conference. It is like a normal conference where you attend with your papers and you write about 1,300 words. So it's very small articles, 1,300 words, which is quite enough for engineers. They like to write. The Faculty of Humanities in Theology in Lund, they have also adopted a campus conference, the same kind that we have. They have 4,000 words, and that's not enough. So the articles that we looked at were those small 1,300 words articles. And she looked at focus on student learning, same 2 years. Now I must say that not all articles are supposed to be focused at student learning, but she took out those articles that were about student learning and looked, are they focusing on student learning? And I mean, some of them are not, even if it's about student learning. But you see, it's not that clear, the development, but it's still a development towards more clearly focused on student learning. The second thing is there relevant research integrated in the articles? Well, already in 2003, 1/3 of them had relevant research integrated, which is not so strange because if you write an article, you should, as academic, have relevant research integrated. So maybe it's more strange that 70% did not have it, anything. And even today, it's just a little bit over half, but there is a development anyway. Finally, she looked at the coherence of the articles. Are the articles fragmented? Are they on a general level, or are they clearly defined? And you also see a development here on the campus conference articles. So what we do is that here we do see a clear development of quality of teaching portfolios and conference articles between these 2 years. And that's nice. That's something has happened. On the other hand, we do have two very important questions here that are very difficult to answer. But I mean, has the teaching improved? Has student learning improved? What we can see from course evaluations, we have a system, a faculty-wide system that we have used for every course since 2003. We do see improvement in students' views of teaching over those 2 years, over those 10 years. So we can say that according to students' evaluations, teaching has improved. Student learning, difficult. You can look at exams, and different ways to do it, but it's difficult. But what is even more difficult is, or I would say impossible, is to say that because we have introduced the Pedagogical Academy, this and this and this has happened. That's impossible to say. But what we do want to think is that because we have done this, we have this academy, we have a lot of other things, in total, it contributes to increased teaching, hopefully. If you look, I do have 5 minutes, so yeah. Look at Faculty of Engineering effects. You could ask yourself the question, has the reward system had any impact in terms of who are being rewarded? What kinds of teachers are rewarded? already showed you that 1/3 of the teachers rewarded are full professors, and that's one thing. I also looked at all those 92 rewarded teachers, and more than 85% of them are active researchers. That's also important. This is not just a system for teachers just teaching, which younger teachers don't anymore because they couldn't survive in the system if they are just teaching. But there are still quite a lot, especially at departments like mathematics and computer science and so on, that are mostly teaching. How many are they? 92, could be a little bit more, could be more, double at least, but slowly increasing. If you look at the leaders at the Faculty of Engineering, academic leaders, well, yeah, the dean is rewarded. One of 3 vice deans are rewarded. So that's important. And as I said, we have been lucky with the deans because they have been extremely supportive over time about this. I mean, now I'm talking here, so I can say what I like to say, but of course I can find 10, 20 teachers out of 600 who would be very critical about the system. Why should we do things like this when we can do serious research? But I don't care about that today. And they are a very small minority, and they are becoming less and less. If you look at heads of departments, that's interesting, because we have 18 departments, and 6 out of 18 heads of departments are rewarded, which is very important, and this has a huge influence on the Faculty of Engineering. Because in the group of heads of departments, they meet with the dean every second week. 1/3 of them are rewarded in the system. That means they are in favor of it, and not only in favor, they are very positive about it. Very important. So that's 1/3 of the heads of departments. That's quite a lot more than if you look at the entire body of teachers. Different committees. Yeah, teacher appointment committees, for example, we have 2 of them. If you look at the chairpersons there, I think it's 2 out of 4 chairpersons or vice chairpersons are rewarded in the system. If you look at research committees, there is at least 1 in each that is rewarded. And this is more like an anecdotal evidence, but we do know that when the dean, the leaders of the faculty, are looking for persons for different committees, they always think of this group as well as other groups. So they think, we are forming this committee or this group, let's take 1 excellent teacher in here as well. So that's also important. Has it had any effect on policy levels? Especially, I would say, recruitment, not so much recruitment as promotion. If the faculty wants to recruit an excellent researcher from Magdeburg, for example, that hasn't any excellence in teaching at all, they will do that, and they don't care. And that's fine. But if you want to be promoted to professor, have spent all your life at Lund University, and cannot show any excellence in teaching, you will not be promoted. You don't have to be part of the academy, but you have to show excellence in teaching in some way. And you can also see things in official documents and so on. Funding, we have talked about that. You get those 250 euros per month in raising salary. It's not unimportant, it's not extremely much, but people tend to say it shows that the faculty is serious about this. So it is important. Students, we have a course evaluation system called the Course Experience Questionnaire. We have had that for 10 years now. We have a database with about 160,000 questionnaires. It's a huge database. You can look at any statistics you like from any angle you want to, and you will always get significant answers from it. So this is an Australian system. Maybe some of you have heard about it. It's been used in Australia since the 90s. There are different areas. There are about 25 questions, different areas about good teaching, clear goals, workload, assessment towards understanding, and overall satisfaction. We looked at 3 years here. We should do that again now. But we did that in 2006, 7, and 8. And what we did is we compared courses where rewarded teachers had a big influence on. It's impossible to say one person, one course now, because people tend to work in groups and so on. But if you take out the courses where the rewarded teachers are very important, make a significant impact on, and compare those courses to all courses, you get this result here. So the red ones are the rewarded teachers, and the blue are all the courses. And these goes from -100 to +100. It's not very, the differences are not very big, but they are there. These are typical answers, statistics from the system. This in Swedish, there you have good teaching, clear goals, and so on. Especially important is that if the student thinks that rewarded teachers present good teaching, that's very, I mean, this is not the students' evaluations of excellence in teaching, but if we agree with the students, it's very good for the system. So we were quite satisfied with this, and we haven't worked on anymore with it. I will end now. We will not have time for the theory. I will just mention that what we are working with now is we are looking at the model, and we are especially arguing that observations of high quality are especially important if you want to promote a scholarly development here. And the reason for that is that observations together with theory will, when people observe things and learn more about teaching and learning, there will be a tension between the knowledge, the observation, and the practice and the planning. And this tension here, there are several researchers in several fields writing about this. Such a tension will result in a development of the practice, which we think is important. So we have an article from 2012. It's downloadable from this website in Australia. I did bring, you're lucky, you're not so many here. I did bring 100 copies here of this article, if you're interested. And I will skip all the others, and that is my email. If there's something you would like, just contact me, and I will send you anything you like about it. I will also like to say one more thing. I did bring some more papers, not so many, about 10 here. I will give you one, so that you should certainly get one. This is an accepted paper in the end of March. This will appear in European Journal of Higher Education. And this is an article that I wrote with a colleague about the development of the Faculty of Engineering from the start until now, and much more elaborated than what I was able to talk to you about today. So this is just a draft that is accepted. But if you are interested, and if you look at European Journal of Higher Education, probably in April something, it will be downloadable from there. There are only 10 or 9 now there. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this very interesting speech.